Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is FPC Radio Live, Tuesday, June 6, 2023. And John, as a recovering Boston Bruins fan, last night was a joy to watch the Florida Panthers just get steamrolled. And might I add, and this was pointed out very, very appropriately by our guy, Jim, last night on Twitter, this finals appearance for the Panthers is eerily similar to their first finals appearance so far through two games in 1996. And by that, I mean close loss in game one, absolutely blown out in game two, heading back to Florida. And we know what happened after that. They did not win a single game this series. So, John, are you now, obviously, maybe not specifically this series, but say your team gets eliminated from the playoffs. Are you rooting for the team that eliminated you to win? Or do you want to see them suffer a miserable, awful defeat?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think each case is different. In this instance, I'm rooting for Las Vegas because I really like Bruce Cassidy. I mean, I got to meet him a few times when I was covering the team for a few years, not covering the team as if I was the beat reporter, but I was in there quite a bit doing work for Boston Herald Radio, Boston Herald Video as well. And he's just a really cool guy. I mean, I just kind of ran into him, introduced myself, shook his hand, and you could just tell he was an engaging guy. So I'm rooting for him more than anything. Plus, I think it's really incredible the way that community has embraced the hockey team. Like, you know, these teams are moving to Las Vegas and the fan base has been incredible. I mean, it feels a little bit like Tampa, how Tampa embraced the Lightning. Vegas is doing the same thing with the Golden Knights. So, yeah, I'm rooting for them without question. In some situations, when you have a player like Aaron Rodgers, who's lost 4 NFC conference championship games.
Has he?
You know, yeah, 1 and 4 in those.
I didn't know that.
Not good. It's getting a little like Patrice Bergeron at some point, right? Although Bergeron does get to the finals every now and then. I'm sorry.
I mean, I guess I asked for that. I mean, that was unnecessary. Yeah, I know, but ouch.
The Packers and the Bruins is the same thing, right? They won their championships like 12 years ago, and then never really were able to get a second one. Although you can make a case the Packers were the second best team in football after winning the Super Bowl for a dozen years after the Patriots, right?
Well, it's funny because the Bruins have like the most or second most regular season wins, which, you know,
so
again,
siment. Yeah.
You know what? Let's just make a truce. Yeah, let's make a truce.
There we go. Okay.
Let's move on from that.
Okay, I'm not afraid to bash Aaron Rodgers. So he's lost 4 NFC championship games. And so in those cases, do I root for the team that beat him to make it look like, okay, well, he was the third best team, or he was the third best team, or the Packers were the third best team in football. So, you know, you kind of can go in that direction. But just looking at this team versus team, I'm rooting for Las Vegas. I think it's a great story. I think their fan base is better than Florida's. And again, I like Bruce Cassidy. I think he's a great coach and a guy that just seems like he's real, right? Like just a real guy and easy to root for. And maybe if he wins the cup, does he come back to Boston, parade around with like Ray Bork did 22 years ago? Maybe he'll hire a duck boat and just ride up and down Causeway Street.
No, we need a few more years of lean championship seasons in Boston for us to revert back to that. Those are some dark days of some dark long stretches without success in Boston sports. I know it happened, folks. I mean, I understand anyone under the age of, well, really, my age essentially. Maybe under the age of 30, didn't get a chance to necessarily see post Boston Celtics 1986 and pre Patriots 2001. There was a lot of heartbreak and you know, going back, a lot of regular season banner, so to speak, moments for us fans there in Boston, and celebrating Ray Bork, which I was there, John. I was there. I was celebrating it. I was happy for Ray Bork. I mean, again, Ray Bork's kind of a very unique situation. And I would be upset if there wasn't some sort of joy out of Boston Bruins fans for Ray Bork. But the idea of celebrating another player on another team winning a championship was kind of a low. That was a real low. But anyways, let's
had to hurt, didn't it? Because again, it was Ray Bork and the Colorado Avalanche beating Martin Brodeur in the Devils, so it was kind of a double-edged sword.
I was personally conflicted, and I've said it before because, again, I was goalie growing up, so my favorite goalie was Martin Brodeur. So I always kind of, after the Bruins would kind of root for the Devils to win because, it was my favorite player and whatnot. I mean, it was kind of a win-win situation for me, I guess. But I really I had met Ray Bourque a few times. Plug. I played with his kid. He was kind of a prick, but whatever.
Kids as famous people can be that way.
Well, look. He was excellent. I mean, the kid was his father's son, I guess you can say. But so I was so happy for Ray Bourque, and every time I see that clip of Joe Sakic handing the cup right to him, I still get chills. I mean, we're talking 22 years later. Literally the exact, and that's the funny thing is in that clip, it starts with the build up after 22 years. So we've now lived. It has been 22 years since Ray Bourque won that cup, and that cup was the culmination of a 22-year career for Ray Bourque. So it's kind of a little symmetry there, I guess. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm rooting, excuse me. I'm rooting for Bruce Cassidy. I mean, I've said it before also. I like going out to Vegas. So it's kind of a, I can very easily root for that team. They're not in the Eastern Conference. They're not a direct rival of the Boston Bruins. So it's not like the Canadiens. Are you kidding me? I'd sooner be dead than root for the Canadiens in anything. I don't care. I don't even care.
That's extreme.
Yeah.
Sooner be dead.
Yeah. Well, you're never going to see me. I don't even care if it comes at the expense of the Bruins. I could not bring myself to ever root for the Montreal Canadiens in any capacity, except to lose or to have great misfortune come to them. That's pretty much it. That's the rooting interest I have when it comes to the Canadiens. But with Vegas, it's look, they're a fun team. They have a lot of really easy players to root for. Aiden Hill's a nice story, obviously playing very well. And, again, if you're a Bruins fan, and I don't think there's any Bruins fans out there that don't like Bruce Cassidy. Maybe there's some, revisionist history going on because of, he's in the final and the Bruins are not. But I think the move to move on from Cassidy and to hire Jim Montgomery, I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad move. I think it was time probably for the two parties to separate. But that doesn't mean that I now have to hate Bruce Cassidy. No, I like Bruce. I'm excited to see him succeed. And, again, Vegas is a fun team to root for, I guess, unless you're obviously a division rival. So, I mean, I don't know if this series is over. I don't know if it's going to follow the exact same script of that 1996, very coincidentally, up against the Avalanche that year. But the Panthers don't look like the Panthers of the last few rounds, or at least the second half of the Bruins series in the middle two rounds, where they just kind of looked like a team of destiny, so to speak. They looked overmatched. They looked out physical. Sergei Bobrovsky just hasn't played as well as he has the last couple rounds. Defense in front of him hasn't been great either. So, yeah, I mean, John, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I would not be surprised if this does not go more than 4 games at this point. Very surprised if it goes more than 5.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Ian, because I think you look at this and you can cross sports in this situation. I always go back to the 07 Colorado Rockies, who needed to win 13 out of 14 to get to a one-game playoff, which they then won, and then they swept through the playoffs, and then there was a 10-day stretch before the World Series, and they just got swept by a better team, the Red Sox, in 2007. This kind of feels like Florida, right? They were the last team to qualify for the playoffs. They trailed 3-1 in the first round. They come back and win that series. That series, including the next 2, they go 11-1 with 5 overtime wins. They look like the team of destiny. Then there's a long break before the Stanley Cup final, and now they're just running up against a team that's better. So that's oftentimes what happens. It just feels like the bubble is burst for Florida, right? All that momentum they had is now gone, and now that you have the goaltender being pulled last night, obviously his confidence is going to be shaken, and may just be target practice at this point for Las Vegas.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this Vegas team again is just they're not falling for the nonsense after the whistle. And look, I said this yesterday. The Bruins were were really good in that the first couple of games.
Mm-hmm.
So, this isn't certainly by any stretch of the imagination over. It's just, that Vegas has got to keep that focus, because like if they can keep this focus, Florida's advantage is obviously getting under the skin, kind of digging at your opponent, getting them to make mistakes or take bad penalties or create turnovers, that type of thing. And Vegas just isn't doing it. And look, that's what Florida's going to do, because they don't have the talent. They have talented players, no doubt about it, but they don't have the same across the board makeup as Vegas. And look, I mean, that's the reason why Florida was an 8th seed this year. I mean, it's impressive what they did, and obviously, upsetting the Bruins in the first round, and that again makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit still, but it is what it is. Upsetting the Bruins, going on and beating Toronto. It's impressive, but at the end of the day, it's like they were an 8th seed, and to your point, they had to do a lot. I mean, it wasn't any guarantee, even on the last day of the regular season, that they were going to be in the playoffs. So, to your point, very similar to what the Colorado Rockies went through, and that example, they ran into pretty much a juggernaut team. The '07 Red Sox were pretty darn good the entire season. So, I will say this though, and as much as I'd love to pile on a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, that hit yesterday was fine. It was just kind of unfortunate that Jack Eichel kind of it looked like he lost his balance a little bit. So it kind of made him fall into the hit at an angle, and it obviously made it look worse than what the intent was. Now, that's not to say, and I've said it before and I've tweeted it before, that I think Florida toes the line quite a bit when it comes to not necessarily dirty play, but like, I mentioned it yesterday, the little cross checks to the back, the post whistle stuff, those type of things that, look, scrappy teams do. And yes, technically, is it against the rules? Sure. But it's the game you play, John. It's how you go about playing the game of hockey. You test the limit, you see how far you can go. And Florida's good at that. And that's one of their strengths, and one of the reasons why they're able to wear down better teams over the course of a 7-game series. They can beat you up, not necessarily scoring, but kind of frustrating you, getting you off your game, and that has more of a long-term ramifications. And like I said before, Vegas just isn't falling for it right now. In that case, though, specifically that hit, like I said, I would love to pile on Matthew Tkachuk, but it was a good hockey hit. It obviously, really knocked Jack Eichel for a loop, but it was good that he was able to get back out there. So
Eichel even said after the game, was a clean hit.
Yep. Which I love. I'm so glad he did too, because look, you can very easily stoke the flames a little bit with that, and he very appropriately. And I think, look, it's a great answer, and it's a great response, and it's the right response, because there's going to be people out there that don't understand the game, whining, bitching, and complaining, John, about that hit. And the reality of it is, it was a hockey hit. It's a physical game. You're going to get hit. And in some cases, sometimes those hits aren't going to be this just, soft landing for these players. So I was very happy that Jack came out and said that.
Yeah, I mean, when you have two pretty good-sized guys colliding on skates, on ice, sometimes bad things can happen. So, yeah, I mean, class act Jack Eichel by saying it was a clean hit, and that's just part of hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. So, all right, tonight, game 2, the NBA Finals move to Miami.
Not till tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, tomorrow. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're not on the air tomorrow, so we're going to treat this like it's today.
Sure.
Because the next time we're on the air will be after the game. So tomorrow. Sorry, folks. If I sent you on a mad scramble of confusion, thinking the NBA Finals was tonight, to be honest, I actually kind of like the fact that I have that much influence, but I apologize. I did not mean that. So, but anyways, tomorrow, NBA Finals. Obviously, we talked about Miami's big win in Game 2, coming back, kind of their MO all season. Is it enough though, John? Because and this is where I caution folks in going all in on Miami. A franchise record 17 3-point shots, and they won by 3. And Denver didn't play great down the stretch. So, and maybe I'm a fool for continuing to question Miami. I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but I don't see that as something they can do enough of the rest of the series to win it. I just think Denver, maybe, that was their first home loss since what, March? So, you know what? They were kind of due, I guess, right? It wouldn't surprise me if Denver comes back out here and wins both games in Miami. Miami's been really good at home, no doubt about it. But I think maybe this loss might kind of refocus Denver a little bit. Maybe get them kind of out of their maybe they're sleepwalking a little bit, and this is going to wake them up.
What happens too in these series, especially when you have these long gaps between games? I mean, you go Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday. I mean, it's 3 games in a week. There's a lot of adjustments. So now Michael Malone, head coach of Denver, has to make the adjustments to combat the adjustments that Eric Spoelstra made going into game 2. So it becomes that chess match between 2 coaches. And Malone's a good coach. Spoelstra's a great coach. The thing with Denver is they didn't play all that well on the road all year. They were 19 and 22 on the road during the regular season, 5 and 3 during the postseason, which is good. So what Denver needs to do, obviously, is get a split in Miami, get back home court advantage, and kind of take control of the series. At that point, then it becomes a best of 3, and Denver has home court advantage. Denver's better if they play to their level, which I don't know if they've really reached it so far in this final. I mean, they've been good at times, not great at times.
Yeah.
If they reach their level, they should be just fine. And again, Miami needed to hit all those threes, needed to hang in there to win that game. And Denver made some mistakes along the way, and they weren't able to hit their threes. And you had a player like Michael Porter Jr., who's 3 of 17 from 3 in this final so far, which is not good enough. I mean, he probably could fit in with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown because that's how bad those 2 guys were in game 6 and 7 combined. So, is it Miami's defense against threes? There were times where guys just missed threes. That's the nature of the sport. But yeah, I still have confidence Denver's going to win this thing. But man, Miami just doesn't go away. I mean, not alone in the series, but in the game. Like they're down 15 in the second quarter. Most teams would say, well, all right, we're down 2-0. We're going to go home and regroup. And they just kind of grind it out, fight back, and then get it down 8 going in the fourth, and then have a great fourth quarter. They're just a really tough team physically and mentally. And that can be frustrating to play against because you just never quite put them away. But I still think Denver's the better team and will win this series.
Has this and I think we've been guilty of this. Maybe guilty is the wrong word, but like we've always talked about in generalities that in basketball it's not so much. It's not the coaching isn't as important as it is say in the NFL or maybe some other sports, but I feel like this at the very least this run by Miami has emphasized the exact opposite. That coaching is very important in the NBA, especially if you have a guy like Eric Spoelstra, who, I mean, again, I there's not much I like about that Miami Heat, but you can't deny how great he is as a head coach in this league. And one can argue that's the reason why they continue to compete with teams that are, on paper, far more talented than they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happening too, and really, I would say the last 4 or 5 years, you don't see the super teams. I mean, when Durant, Curry, Thompson, Draymond were together in Golden State, you could have brought in Red Auerbach, Pat Riley, whoever to coach the opposing team, and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Golden State was going to win those series. But since then, we saw Toronto beat Golden State in the 19 finals, and part of that was Kevin Durant played a grand total of 10 minutes, and then Klay Thompson blew out his knee in game 6, and Steph was kind of banged up in that series as Toronto won. But since then, it's been, really good teams winning the NBA finals, but not great teams, not loaded teams. Certainly Denver's really good, but they're not loaded. I mean, they're not like the Golden State Warriors with Durant, Curry, Thompson, and Draymond. They're a really good team. This Miami team, obviously, we think is short on talent, but because of the coaching, they're able to get there. So maybe in that era where it was dominated by LeBron in the East and Steph in the West, that coaching didn't matter. But now it does because you just can't afford to have 3, great players on a team together because of the contract. So, yeah, I think coaching's become more important. And those between game adjustments that you have to make and knowing when to call timeouts and what you do with your substitution patterns. And look, even like a little move like putting Kevin Love into the starting lineup kind of changed at least the mojo early in that game to give them an 11-point lead. Now, Denver fought back and had a 15-point lead. It was a great stretch by the Nuggets. But absolutely, coaching is becoming more important. And we're seeing it. Teams are moving off coaches pretty quickly and bringing in other coaches and then giving them 6-year, $78.5 million contracts, as is the case with Monty Williams, right?
He got the Suns to the finals that one time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and meanwhile, Mike Budenholzer, who has a championship, still doesn't have a job, although he may be looking to take a year off because he had some family crisis during the postseason. So maybe he wants to just kind of relax for a year, collect money from the Bucks, and then resurface next year. But yeah, now you're paying coaches like NFL head coaches. I think the importance of the head coach is more important than it's been in the past.
Well, that super team era, I think in hindsight, as we kind of look back at it, it's not as simple as just throwing three really good players together. You know what I mean? I think obviously opportunity, situation, and I think that the circumstances between 2010 or really let's say 2007, because we'll include the Celtics, as I think that really kind of kicked off that what I'm going to call like basically a 10 to 13 year era of the super team. Where it's like. That's all that mattered because, well, first of all, I think just the Garnett, Allen, and Pierce complemented each other so well. I mean, they were obviously super talented. Garnett was arguably one of the best players in the league still when he first arrived, certainly defensively. And I think just the complement of those three, along with Rajon Rondo, Perkins, and everyone else, and new Celtics assistant head coach Sam Cassell, of course. But then you get the combination of LeBron James, Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, and that is, again, I mean, you're not. First of all, LeBron is you're talking at the very height, I believe, of his ability was his run with Miami. I mean, just absolutely, I mean, unbelievably great. And then you pair him with someone who individually is great too, in Dwayne Wade, and then hey, Chris Bosh, another really great player. So I think that was a unique situation that created such dominance. And then obviously I'm not saying this as an insult, but getting to Cleveland and kind of taking advantage of a transitioning East. Let's put it that way. I think that's I'm not trying to say weak competition. That's not what I'm saying. But the reality of it is that the Eastern Conference was transitioning. So, well, what happens? Well, a great player can dominate like LeBron did. So, but over in the West, you have a kind of a unique situation where some of the players you drafted just happen to just be perfect for the new era of basketball. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Steph Curry, obviously Klay Thompson. I mean, the abundance of threes. You're not thinking about that when they first get drafted into the league. So that combination, along with Kevin Durant, created, again, this super team. And John, we've said it before. I know we've talked about it. There have been far more failed attempts at quote unquote super teams than there have been successes. And really, those three that I just mentioned, the Celtics, the Heat, and the Warriors, are really the only three that succeeded in putting together great players and having a lot of success. And unfortunately for the Celtics, I think they fell short of what they could have done.
You just read my mind, Ian, because they won one championship when they probably should have won two.
If Kevin Garnett doesn't get injured, I mean, that's one of the worst.
Another one in there, right? Yeah. And then obviously Perkins getting hurt in Game 6 of the finals, and then them losing to the Lakers. Even the Heat, to a point, they were together for 4 years and they won two. They probably should have won three. Golden State pretty much got what they deserved, winning four of them. I mean, they benefited from other teams' injuries, and then in 19 they didn't have Durant. They probably beat Toronto in that finals if Durant's there. But really, going back to the 80s, there's always been super teams. Celtics and Lakers dominated the 80s. Jordan dominated the 90s. There was a 9-year stretch, Ian, where either Shaq or Duncan won the championship 8 of those 9 years, and then Kobe took over for a couple of years with the Lakers. So there's always been like 2 or 3 teams per decade that have dominated. And then we saw it obviously in the 2010s with LeBron and then Golden State. This decade's setting up to be more like the 70s, where I think the Celtics were the only team in the 70s to win 2 championships in the decade. It was like Celtics, then Golden State, then Celtics, then Portland, then
right.
Washington and Seattle. And, it was like to take a turn. In fact, from the late 60s till 1988, there'd never been a repeat champ in the NBA. It was like a 20-year gap.
and now you almost expect it.
Abnormal. Oh, God, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's so true. So the sport's kind of gone back to the 70s in that sense where, and that can be exciting. I kind of like the idea of a super team because it gives everyone a target.
Oh, sure.
Especially if they get upset, now it becomes, look, the Patriots. They weren't constructed as a super team. They just happened to be one because of the quarterback.
Well,
but, I think everybody targeting them.
And I think there is a difference. Like, so for example, the Celtics, of the 80s, and I guess you can again say this about Golden State. So maybe I'm contradicting myself a little bit here, but the Celtics of the 80s, obviously majority of it was homegrown. And, same with, the Bulls, obviously Jordan being the centerpiece of it. But I think in terms of the era, the super team era, I guess I was referring to was going outside the box to bring in play. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't even know if
Absolutely.
it's worth distinguishing.
No, perfect. Yeah, because even in a sense, the Celtics traded for Garnett and Ray Allen, whereas the Heat signed Bosh and LeBron.
Right.
Agents. So that's a little bit different.
And went out and obviously, again, I'd say go out and improve their team. Every team tries to do that. But just the how can I put it? The overt act of trying to combine multiple superstars. And that's something that, and look, we've seen teams try that and fail. Look at Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work for them. Look at Brooklyn again.
No.
It didn't work for them again. So, like, it happened twice, John. They traded for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, all that stuff. It failed. They tried to put Kyrie, James Harden, and I mean, Jesus. I mean, it's I don't know.
Kyrie's in the middle of a lot of this, but you look at it also with a team like the Clippers, who haven't even made the finals, but they signed Kawhi Leonard as a free agent in 2019, and he said, "I'll come there if you trade for Paul George." So now you have 2 elite wings, and what have they done? They've gone to 1 conference finals, and that was without Kawhi playing. He got hurt in the previous series. So yeah, it's you're talking about players constructing the team, right? It was LeBron and Bosh and Wade getting together and say, this was during, I think, the 2008 Olympics when they were all on the same team. They said, we're going to get together in 2010 and form a super team.
Not
like,
two,
that
not
wasn't
three,
done in the 80s and
not
90s.
four, not 5, not 6.
Oh, that's one of my favorite clips ever. It's
you
just
like that.
I love it. I love it. But all right, that's gonna do it for us here today. Like I said, we'll be off tomorrow, but we'll be back on Thursday, obviously, and we'll kind of recap Game 3 of the Heat and Nuggets series, and we'll see if we were right or wrong, and perhaps we'll get some DeAndre Hopkins news. We don't know. We'll see. But thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you then.